I'm Dane Rose, and this is a life map. It's very simple, and it's one of a number of life maps, and I present it here as always a reminder to myself, and also because it's a good map. It's got a good 60% of what we need to live a great life can be extrapolated from this map. One of the most powerful things to map out in not only our own life, but the life of those around us that we care about, and to a larger extent our community, is Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. Notice the word need, the word hierarchy. The need that we need first of all is to survive physically. Warmth, good food, shelter, medicine, place to sleep, and in our culture that means money. If you're in a culture that does not need money, then you just need to be able to engage with your body, and you can create all of these things in a tribal setting. But survival is the first of all of our human needs. Security in that survival is the next need. Love and belonging, the need after that. Self-esteem, a sense of liking who one is, appreciating and respecting who one is, often tied in closely with the esteem of others. And after self-esteem, it's a little bit less defined in these kind of different versions of Maslow's hierarchy. But the movement is towards, first of all, developing gifts, developing talents, developing competencies, and giving those back to the community. The more masterful, the more secure, meaning when survival and security are very strongly held, it is a natural progression within the human brain that we move up from the reptilian brain stem that's designed to help us just survive, through the limbic brain into more of the conscious mind. And as we continue to transcend the predominant regions of the brain that we're working to satisfy in a certain way, a lifetime of a human being mirrors hundreds of millions of years of evolution. And so we're moving up from that, that period where the programming was that of a fight, flight, freeze reptile to more of a limbic, instinctual mammal, to more of being aware, this part that becomes aware of these dynamics. And then moving up into the ability to dream about the future and the ability ultimately to transcend the primary identity as that of a separate, isolated, ego individual identity at war for survival and competing with survival with the rest of the world. When we transcend that identity, we feel and find ourselves as part of a wave, part of an ecology of health and well-being, that we willingly transcend our own short-term narrow beam focus agendas in order to participate in something bigger. Now, one of the definitions of intelligence is the efficiency with which energy is turned into human well-being. Energy, time, money, natural resources, well-being, mental, emotional, physical well-being. someone that is very competent and intelligent transforms energy into well-being incredibly efficiently. And one of the most efficient ways to transform energy into vast amounts of untapped well-being that's locked in this alchemy of synergy is when you have a group of people that put a common purpose, a common field, ahead of their own. When you have a group of people that transcend their personal narrow beam focus in order to participate in a grander circle, a grander project, a grander vision, you release this possibility of synergy. And so the progression from the reptilian brainstem up into the future dreaming and the transcendent states of consciousness is one of the most intelligent things that any species can possibly do in our situation. The more human beings on the planet are engaging with reality with the primary question each morning, how can I participate in something bigger than myself that releases potential for all? To the degree someone is living in that question, there is a field of possibility that opens up, a field of probability that opens up that does not and cannot open in any other way. And if you've seen the art about hell, one of the great drawings I like is the 3-foot fork drawing, where there's a feast at the table and every demon has 3-foot forks, and so they can't feed themselves. They can't get the food into their mouth. But they could all happily feed each other. It's just their consciousness is so closed. It's so limited to the egoic agenda that they have zero empathy for anyone around them. They have zero interest in anyone around them. They have no concept of how helping someone else could actually help themselves. And so they're all sitting starving at the feast because they've got 3-foot forks. And all they have to do to enjoy the feast is, of course, feed another person, another demon, who has the intelligence, or even move to basic negotiation. Capitalism is a negotiated version of this. And it is, of the different monetary policies, free market capitalism is closer to a sense of transcendence than everyone does their own thing and nothing moves. You have to grow all your own food on your own farm and all that, and you can't move it, and it's banned. That you're just required by law to. So you have that direction of transcendence through negotiation, which is the business model. And then you have a similar thing to a larger degree, because when you come at something transcendently, you don't make the kind of trade-offs DuPont made when suppressing the C8 data in Teflon that now has the entire globe's population polluted with C8 from the Teflon Corporation. You don't have a whole valley, finding birth defects and cancer, etc., because of the pollutants released by DuPont in their factory, because it doesn't make sense to give a few shareholders an extra $1 billion a year, with the trade-off being that of polluting the entire bloodstream of the human race. You literally cannot go to a country anywhere on the earth where you can't randomly sample people and find C8 in their blood, which is a major toxin. So it's important to keep that journey in mind, because it's a journey inside your own brain that correlates with the journey in your community. Unless you have the support of your community to survive and to feel secure in that survival and have love and belonging, you do not get to move to the next level in your hierarchy of human needs. And unless you reach that level of competence and giving back to your community, and doing that well and feeling the joy of that, and thus discovering the transcendent region of the brain where, when Rockefeller Sr., if you read the biography, realized he was getting sick from greed and from anxiety and worry about every little penny, and he flipped to giving. That's when his health returned, but that's also when he got to know a new part of himself. When Bill Gates, flipped from clinging on to Microsoft constantly, when he flipped to giving back in the world, that's when you discover, there's a part in there whose greatest joy is to give to other people, is to see other people blessed. And it's that energy that has the possibility of releasing the greatest potential field of the species. So it is the most intelligent of all of the different faces within the brain. But it is only intelligent in a specific environment. Meaning, when you are surrounded by sociopaths, to come from that place of transcendence and be wiped out is not intelligent, because it takes you back to survival. You're not going to survive in a sociopathic environment unless you behave in a fight, flight, freeze, reptilian defense pattern. And so there's this dance with this process. But one way of looking at the journey of your life is, how are you doing? Survival, security, love and belonging, self-esteem, developing competency and gifts to give back to family and to community and to church, however that is defined for you. And then continuing to develop based on that foundation of strong security, like in a capitalist system. Now maybe you're in your 40s, your 50s, you've got a good nest egg, you can survive. You're confident in your ability to survive. And if you delete the idea of retirement as an ideal, and just say, as long as I'm living a rich life doing stuff that I love, why would I want to die quicker? Because I'm going to die quicker when I have no purpose and no focus. I want to keep giving back. And I want to develop that model. So we have this is one lens to map a life. Now, over here we have investing. Now, the beauty of investing is this phenomena of compound interest. And it's built into nature's code. If you plant, let's say you want shade, and you plant 100 shade trees sooner, the faster you plant the trees, they will grow in a compounding way. They will, because nature will feed those trees on their own. You just have to get them in the ground. And 5, 10, 15 years, depending on the size of the tree, you've got all of that work within nature partnering with you to provide all of this shade. It's an incredible return on investment. If you buy a 4-inch perennial and plant it in the garden, within 18 months it's grown into the size of a 5 gallon perennial. And the 4-inch perennial might cost $2. 18 months later, it might cost $20. That's an incredible return on investment. So theoretically, retirement funds, etc., have a good return on investment, in the terms of compound interest in an investment portfolio. But this is true in any area. Any area that is a natural system has this phenomenon of compound interest. So you have investment in yourself, in your self-awareness, in your growth, in your skills. This has a compounding return, and a compound interest. You have investment in a retirement fund or a vision fund. How about a giving fund or a vision fund or a make a difference fund? That money will grow, invested wisely, towards the future. And the reason that I like to invest in my future is the following. I believe that my future self will be more intelligent than I am, because I am more intelligent than the me 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago. So if the future is more intelligent than the present, the question is, do you want to saddle the most intelligent part of yourself with debt and burden that is created by the part of you that is dumber? Because if the future is more intelligent, then you're less intelligent. When you borrow money from the future to spend stuff you think is smart today, you're creating a burden for a more intelligent part of yourself to pay off, because you have ideas. And the opposite creates a lot more wealth, in my opinion. The other approach is to sacrifice something today because you know that there's going to be a part of you that's going to come along in the future who knows more than you do, who's smarter, more kind, more intelligent, more loving than you are. And you want them to have a lot of money, and you want them to have a lot of opportunity so that they can spend that love and that time and that intelligence more efficiently to benefit you, because you are the beneficiary when you come to that future point. Another important thing to think about in the future is goals. Goals accelerate the direction towards the future by an average of 400%. In my life, it's 400%. If I have yearly, quarterly, monthly, weekly, and daily goals, and review them at that, review the daily goals daily, review the weekly goals weekly. When I'm making the daily goals, look at the weekly goals and decide which of the weekly goals I'm going to do tomorrow, and then check them off. I do 400% more of the things that take me towards those goals. So that's an investment in the future. And I don't miss what I give up. I do give up stuff. I give up absent-mindedly playing a game. I give up absent-mindedly watching another TV show, just laying around in no big hurry, or eating a second helping, because the difference is, I don't know what else to do, let's just do this. But when you've got a goal and you're checking in, you're going to be checking that off, that stuff gets deleted. And then there's like, I have to make sure to call this and do this because that's important for next year's goal. Health is, of course, another arena. You can treat your body in a way that your future self is left with a miserable, unhealthy body, And so they could do all these wonderful things, except you treated their body so poorly that by the time this intelligent person comes along, they've got nothing to work with. And knowledge, I think, is one of the most powerful investments. And so I have an Audible library with 500 books and growing, and it's just wonderful to see that, money is not the main focus for me, but that $5,000 investment has already generated hundreds of thousands of dollars of income. So it pays back all the library if you're enacting things. Then there's this wealth of budding information. I'm listening to John Doerr's OKR framework, do what matters. It's fun to just see how different lives affect one another over time. Now, I want to create a beacon or a lighthouse type framework as we're talking about all this. That if in doubt, go to this point. If in doubt, be useful. Become useful. Invest in being useful. So, if you are the most useful person in the room, it is in everyone's interest that you survive, that you are secure in your survival, and that you receive lots of love and belonging. This will help with your sense of self-esteem. If you make yourself useful to whichever group you decide you'd like to honor, and you have different values, and so it's good to pick a group that you value, that you admire, that deifies some of your principles. If you're honoring peace and meditation, could be a monastery, could be, if it's, business, could be one of the top business people in your community or in your company. Make yourself useful to some group or some person that you admire. You want to become more like them. You want to support that enterprise. Make yourself useful. And this is very practical. Everyone needs to eat. If you can cook delicious food efficiently, that's useful. Almost everyone wants a massage. If you can develop the art of creating a great massage, that's useful. Everyone admires excellence. If you can develop any useful trait to be in the top 5% of people with that trait, be it a surgeon, be it computer coding, be it videography. For example, videography, we're in an information world. If you can film and edit videos and tell a story better than 95% of the storytellers and editors, you are in instant demand. You're very, very useful. If you know how to turn garbage into useful forms of energy, you are incredibly useful. If you know how to help someone get elected, you are very useful to politicians. You have to decide if you admire that group and want to support that. Be useful, be of service, develop excellence. And I want to remind us that ultimately we are emotionally driven human beings. We have varying levels of vision and sophistication, but everyone wants to feel better over time, and everyone wants to feel less pain over time. Obviously, when you invest, you create a certain amount of sacrifice, but if you understand that that's going to come back with compound interest, the sting of the sacrifice today, I'm going to take 100 aside, 100 aside, and put that to the future, is balanced. The sting is offset. So we're all ultimately emotional human beings who want to feel good and avoid feeling bad. If you can teach people how to feel better, if you can reduce people's pain, you just look at what the pain is. When I started my business, I asked a bunch of clients, what do you hate about landscape contractors? And they said, along with the rest of the construction industry, bad communication, cost overruns, things done late. And I thought, okay, that makes sense. And yes, that seems to be a big pain point in the industry. And so I designed my entire company so that I could get 80% of my jobs done early, all of my jobs done on budget, and would have detailed and proactive communication on a daily basis that eliminated all that pain. My usefulness went up. When I understood that some people didn't understand the industry enough to know what they didn't understand, I wrote 2 local books. The local books, much more useful than a national book. Low print runs, of course, because you got just a small local audience. But every local that can see local phone numbers, this is good for this, that's good for this, go call so-and-so, that place rents the best rototiller, this, but it's incredibly useful. Make yourself useful. And you will climb Maslow's hierarchy of needs indirectly. And if you're ever bored, just ask 10 people what's the biggest pain in their life, 10 people you care about, what's their biggest pain, what's their biggest dream, and then you make yourself useful in eliminating that pain and creating that dream. Let's look at habits, because these are daily things that if you cultivate, it moves things along in the masculine sense of taking action. So we've already talked about goals, a daily habit. 400% boost right there. Do it now, a daily habit that negates the need to have to write down lists. And one of the things that I really feel grateful for is my virtual assistant, because it allows me to practice this, do it now, 500% more. Because when I get an idea, I have trained my assistant to be able to act in 80% of the areas that need this kind of attention. When I get an idea, I run over to the desktop, press record, tell Devang, my assistant, exactly what I want him to research, do, make happen. Click send. He gets it a few seconds later in audio format. And then he's fabulous. And so it's done. It's off the list. And stuff happens. Backup plans as a daily thing. In other words, when you're doing something important, particularly that has a deadline, and I think of this in terms of work, you're going to encounter unknown terrain. That's a given. And you're going to encounter kind of compounding events where, for me, it's like, the crew half the crew went on vacation. The car broke down for, this crew member. Then it turns out there's no flat, spare tire there. And then it turns out, they don't have cell reception here. And then it turns out that was the day the neighbor decided to block the drive. And, and these things all cluster from time to time. And so you want to invest in redundancy in important areas. And so, redundancy in communication, a backup battery in the car, a backup battery in the travel bag, a backup phone, a backup place for contact information, all your data in the cloud. I like the Backblaze app, which kind of runs in the background, all your information in the cloud, as well as, on a laptop, as well as a few things printed out. So if this got stolen, you'd have, backup plans so that you walk through the various calamities that could happen, and you prepare and you invest in mitigating them. I have a generator in the garage. I've never used it once. I had an extra $400. I thought, could come in handy. Could come in handy. I could have a job out, away from a power outlet and want to plug this in. I could have a power outage here in the house for 3 or 4 days and want to keep my data stream and all that. It's just there. Why not? It's tucked away in a part under the garage. So these backups, and whenever you're setting out to do an important time-sensitive goal, okay, if this person doesn't show up, who am I going to call next, and how am I going to do this? Backup also implies having an emergency fund. For me, having $30,000 in the bank, plus no debt, and the $30,000 just being for emergency, it does a number of things. I keep it in my account. So first of all, no balancing checkbooks. When you've got a $30,000 slush fund and don't usually write checks for more than $5,000 at a time, I never have to check my balances. I mean, I do when I go on to do online banking. Oh, it's this. Okay. But it frees up time. And it's there for, oh my God, the car got in an accident. I don't want to go into debt to buy a new car. I'll just buy a used truck for $20,000. Okay, now we have to build up the backup fund again. Expose yourself to great mentors on a weekly basis. Spend at least 3 hours a week learning something from someone great. So, for example, I enjoyed in my teenage years learning about Rockefeller Sr., Henry Ford Sr., Gates and Jobs, and just learning how different business people think. I enjoy listening to company biographies. How did Google get started? How many rejections did Google have to go through before they found someone like John Doerr to invest? And what kept them going through those rejections? These are all very interesting stories. So expose yourself to great mentors. Teach to learn. Try and teach and be helpful to someone, because I go away from a video like this having my head screwed on a little bit straighter. Because, of course, in the natural, movements of life, there are areas in here that I can do better. And I get to think about that and then take action. And so you integrate what you're learning by teaching it. You also make yourself more useful. Principles. Move towards symmetry. The sphere is the most elegant shape that we know of. It takes less energy to move a sphere than any other shape. That's why we have wheels. When we're focusing on conserving energy, the most intelligent car travels further with less energy. The sphere is the most whole, the most healthy. We get the word health from wholeness, and we get the word wholeness from the sphere. And so if you look at any area of your life, let's say you look at this map here and you'd say, well, where am I weak? And if you realize, gee, I've never thought, how can I make myself useful? I've never even thought of that once. Okay, so what would make this more whole would be to maybe focus on that, to round things out. There's a counter-truth, which is develop your gifts, develop your excellence, and look at the 80-20 principle. The 80-20 principle says that 20% of your time is going to generate 80% of your results. And so one of the reasons that I have a virtual assistant and one of the reasons I have a house manager is that both of those things free up about 2 hours a day of needed chores, and then I do some more kind of nonprofit work and stuff. But both of those free up 2 hours a day of my attention. And I can then spend those 2 hours doing the 20% of what I do that creates 80% of the value for my clients. So you have that 80-20 principle, which elongates things in the areas you're very competent. And then you have the spherical thing that says, for example, we in Western culture, we develop the body somewhat, and we abuse the body a lot. We develop the brain the most, the thinking. And then we completely ignore feelings and emotions in our culture and in our education program. So if you're looking towards symmetry, you would develop an emotional education, which would then help you be of service to the primary need of every human being to feel better and not feel bad. Give and receive is moving towards symmetry, and that always works. You know, the more people you try and be useful for, the more you will find yourself welcome, secure, etc. And so there's a symmetry in that. So in order to receive more, you also want to give more. And if that's not being appreciated, contract, make it into a contract. And if it's true that people really appreciate what you're receiving, they will agree to give something back. Data-based reality models. This is a model of interacting with reality based on the experience in my life. If you test it out in your life and your life improves, then you've got data that supports this model of reality. It's not the model of reality. It's not 100% true. It's true enough. It's useful. One of the things that tends to go on, and it ties in with goals, is we tend to overestimate the amount of stuff we can get done in a year and underestimate just how big something could be in 20 years. It hasn't even been 20 years. And Elon Musk has SpaceX, Tesla, SolarCity, the Boring Company, and has given rise to Hyperloop. And one guy with a big vision following a lot of these things. How could he be most useful to the planet? Make the planet interplanetary? Make the species interplanetary? Bring in sustainable energy? Solve traffic problems? Elon Musk is all about being useful. And the more useful he is, the more valuable he becomes, and the more ranking he has. Investing in the future, when you think interplanetary, you're going pretty long range, but he's done all that in 20 years. And so we tend to underestimate what a sustained push can do in 20 years, and we tend to overestimate what we can do in a year. The other principle that is very important to understand is that we have an environment, and then we have free will. So if I come up and slap you on the face, you are likely to feel startled and fear. And if you're a good Buddhist, you can calm yourself and say, I'm present in the moment. I choose not to respond to this thing, and I'm going to see what's going on. If you're not present in the moment, you just, what the fuck, and you punch someone or hit them back or call the police, whatever. In the short term, you can adopt the Buddhist pose of someone slaps you in the face. You can choose to transcend your environment. But if you're being slapped in the face every 5 seconds and then being beaten up on the head with a concrete pole and then this, you cannot do that continually because it takes effort and reserve to use will to move the energy out and respond to something different than the environment. That takes willpower. So what you want to do is use your willpower specifically to create an environment that supports you in being the person you want to be. That's the use of willpower. I can see that if I'm slapped in the face or raped or stolen from or molested or beaten up or drowned, I can see if that happens on a regular basis, that first of all, I'm going to get worn out fighting it. I'm going to get worn out doing this. So what I need to do is I need to create a sustainable environment that reduces the environmental pressure to be someone I don't want to be. I don't want to be dead. I don't want to be humiliated. I don't want to be in a constant battle with myself to say, calm down, calm down. I don't want to be doing that. I want to be effortlessly moving towards being competent and being useful. So the environment always wins in the long run. So you have the willpower that can fight the environment in the short term. You can be in an abusive relationship, and you can fight the abuser in the short term. You can be in a relationship that evokes the abuser in you. There are some people that insist on being abused because it makes them feel comfortable. And if you are with such a person, you can fight that. The urge to slap them, the urge to call them an idiot, you can fight that. But if they are intent and if you are constantly around them, it is very likely that, for example, they will aggravate you to such a point where you call them an idiot. And then they will reward you for calling them an idiot because that's a terrain that is comfortable. It's a familiar abuse cycle. So you will not feel you'll feel release of that anger and you won't feel, and so it'll be easier to call them an idiot the next time. Eventually, you look at yourself and say, ever since I've been in this relationship, I've been increasingly verbally abusive. I don't like that about myself. I don't want to be that way. What's the answer? It's not willpower. It's changing something fundamental in the relationship dynamic. It may be introducing a third variable. Maybe you help your partner with hypnosis, maybe with therapy, maybe with maybe a boundary. Or maybe you separate because they don't know how to stop rewarding the abuser in you. You don't abuse this person and you don't abuse this person. You just find yourself being your worst self with this one person. And it's very easy to be that way, and it's very hard to shift with that person. And so you accept, I don't know how to deal with that. And so I'm going to pull out of the relationship and enter an environment in which I can be the person I want to be. So if you understand that willpower has a place, but we have very limited use of willpower. So the purpose of willpower is to like get up and move town, or get up and confront the abuser, or call the police and see that they have a restraining order, or whatever it is, that's the use of willpower. And that what is not the use of willpower is to be in a toxic environment that harms you and brings out the worst in you, and continually use willpower to fight yourself to be different than the environment evokes. Because the environment will evoke a part of you. And if you spend your time fighting the part of you that evokes, you will lose. If you spend your willpower changing the environment or moving out of it, you will win. And where you want to settle, and where a tremendous amount of your intention and energy in life should be, is you want to live in the country, you want to live in the community, you want to live and work with the people, you want to partner with people that are interested in co-creating an environment that is intended to bring out these qualities in the group. It's much easier to do on a group level. It's much harder to find the group. So that's, why people move. Like there's Portland, Oregon, for example. It has a vibe around it that many other towns in the United States don't have. So people move there. And instantly certain things are easier than they were in the old place. Thailand, for me, is 1,000% easier to express certain parts that are important to me. And so one of the kindest things I can do for myself is to get myself to Thailand months of the year. And then it's 1,000 times, or it's 1,000%, 10 times easier. And so I'm more feminine in Thailand than I am in the United States, because that's rewarded there. It's punished in the United States. I'm closer to children in Thailand than in the United States. So I love children, so I play with them over there. I smile and make jokes more in Thailand than I do in the United States. And it's very healthy. And I swim more in the warm water, and that's healthy. And I eat better food. And I enjoy more spontaneity, and I enjoy more one-on-one connection. All of that is 1,000% easier in Thailand. It's all important to me. So I have an apartment. Finding that place in the planet or in a community that is 1,000% easier for you to be the you that you want to be, that's good discipline. The will is the effort to take. I had to travel the world to find that place specifically. That was my willpower. I only have energy to do that once. I can't just go off traveling the world every time. But I did that to find the place. And then I have the willpower to get over there. It's not fun flying an 18-hour flight. It's not fun going through customs. I don't like spending $1,200 each trip for just the airline. But that's the willpower. I can discipline that, and then a whole world opens up on the other side. That completes this map, which I will summarize as invest in the future. Monitor your own and other people's hierarchy of needs and your position on that. Be as useful as you can to the people you admire and want to serve. Follow these principles, cultivate daily habits, and work towards the environment. Finding, creating, and designing with will value yourself enough to create the environment that brings out the best in you. If you take any step towards beauty, truth, and goodness that you're excited about and want to share, reach out. I'd love to hear.